And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome aboard. I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Saturday, July 12th, 2025. And we start out with the state of the sea ice. Way in the north, the Arctic region, the ice gradually continues to melt through this summer season. It typically reaches its minimum extent third week of September, at least climatologically speaking. But we can see that process continues to unfold along the Chukchi Sea coast, especially as you get upwards from Cape Lisburne to Utqiagvik and then along the Beaufort Sea coast. So this will only continue here as we go further into the summer. Looking at the synoptic weather map for late tonight and early Sunday, we have a weak area of high pressure over the Gulf. Still some lingering showers potentially over the Panhandle, but on the lighter side with some improving conditions. There's a low coming in along the Kamchatka Peninsula, push of moist, warmer air cutting across the Bering Sea. And as we get into Sunday afternoon, we are looking at the potential for some moisture beginning to come back up northward from southern areas of the mainland, but still relatively drier and warmer temperatures in the central eastern interior in the 70s to lower 80s. We do find a little breezier conditions, parts of the Chukchi Sea toward the Russian Arctic coast and then out here in the western central Bering. Weak high pressure over the Gulf should generally keep winds lighter there, and still a few lingering showers over parts of the Panhandle. For Monday, we still have ridging up into the Gulf. Monday, Tuesday should be a bit drier and warmer days for the Panhandle and along the northeastern Gulf Coast. Moisture continues inland across the mainland Monday afternoon and into Tuesday, so there'll be an increased threat of scattered showers and a few thunderstorms, along with a little more cloud cover, keeping temperatures a little cooler as we go into the early week. And then back to the west, here comes that frontal system in low out through the western Bering. And what it means, at least for southeast Alaska here on Sunday, winds south to variable 5 to 10 knots, inner channels, Lynn Canal down through Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait and Dixon Entrance, waves generally a foot or two. South of Sitka, off of Craig, west-southwest winds at 10 knots, but you get north of there, off of Sitka and further outside of Cross Sound to Yakutat Bay, winds will be out of the northwest to north, right around 15 knots with waves 5-6 feet. For Monday, winds for the inner channels, southerly 10 knots, Lynn Canal, waves a foot or two, southwest winds 10 knots, waves a foot or two, Stevens Passage, northwest winds 15 knots there, Ketchikan, Metlakatla to off of Craig, waves running 3 to maybe as much as 5 feet off the southwestern coast there of the Panhandle. And then coming upward, westerly winds inward towards Sitka, Cross Sound, and outside of Yakutat Bay at 10 to 15 knots, waves 4 to 5 feet. Within Prince William Sound on Sunday, variable winds 10 knots, waves generally just a foot or two, 10-knot variable winds off of Kayak Island. As we look at Cook Inlet, south-southwest winds, middle upper Cook Inlet 15 knots, waves 2-3 feet. Southeast winds around Kennedy Entrance into Kamishak Bay with waves of 2 to 3 feet. On Monday, wind should generally be southeasterly in this wider expanse of Prince William Sound, waves running a couple of feet. Outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance to Kayak Island and off of the eastern Kenai coast, variable winds to 10 knots and waves just 2 to 3 feet. Same kind of wind layout for Cook Inlet, southeast winds there at the entrance into Kamishak Bay, 15 knots becoming southerly as you go up along from middle upper Cook Inlet with waves of 3 to 4 feet. On Sunday, Kodiak Island will see south-southwest winds at 15 knots, waves maybe 3-4 feet either side, and then generally easterly winds out of Bristol Bay along the North Pacific side and the Bering sides at 10 to 15 knots before becoming variable around 10 knots either side there at Cold Bay and False Pass. For Monday, winds continue south-southwest 15 knots around Kodiak Island. Generally variable winds all along the Alaska Peninsula either side with waves generally running just a couple of feet. For the eastern Aleutians, winds will be variable to northeasterly at 10 knots. As we get further west, winds will pick back up from the southwest at 20 to 25 knots, Kiska to Shemya. And then on Monday, Gradually, variable to southerly winds there around the far eastern Aleutians, 10 to 15 knots, becoming southerly and increasing back up to 25 knots from Atka and Adak westward all the way through Kiska and Shimia. And then as we look at the southwest coast, we have south winds 10 knots into Bristol Bay, southwest winds into Kuskokwim Bay at 10 knots. Variable winds only around 10 knots out toward the Pribilofs, waves a foot or two. Generally west-southwest winds into the lower Yukon coast and Norton Sound at 5 to 10 knots, waves just a foot or two, but winds could be as high as 30 knots in the vicinity of St. Matthew. And then on Monday, generally more of a southerly flow across the entire region. We could see south-southeast winds at 25 knots, St. Matthew down to St. Paul with waves of 7 to 8 feet. South winds 10 knots into Bristol Bay, increasing to 20 knots into Kuskokwim Bay with waves a couple of feet there, and then along the lower Yukon coast into this wider expanse of Norton Sound between St. Michael Stebbins on up toward Nome. We're looking at 15 to 20 knot winds and waves 3 to 4 feet. Now along the west side of the Seward Peninsula and the north side of St. Lawrence Island, south-southwest winds at 15 knots, waves running 2-3 feet. As we pass through the Bering Strait, south winds pick up 20 to 25 knots, especially off the Lisburn Peninsula. And then as we get up along the Beaufort Sea coast, winds become more easterly at 10 knots with waves a foot or two where there's some open water. And then for Monday, up along the Beaufort Sea coast, winds will have some sort of southerly component, southeast 10 knots around Kaktovik, but southwesterly Prudhoe Bay out to Utqiagvik with waves running a couple of feet. Strongest winds, though, Monday there in the Chukchi Sea off of Point Lay, upwards of 25 knots off of Point Lay and Cape Lisburn. Waves could be running as high as 6 to 8 feet in that area of the Chukchi Sea where there is open water. And then passing down through the Bering Strait, we could see winds of southerly winds there of 25 knots there around Wales and Teller. And then along the west side of the Seward Peninsula, especially Port Clarence and on over toward the north side of St. Lawrence Island, on Monday, winds are expected to be southerly at 20 knots with waves running 4 to 6 feet.